Welcome, welcome. We are
Hello.
live on a is today Wednesday? Tuesday. Wait,
Wednesday. Yep.
it is Wednesday. Okay, good. I was right the first time. November 2nd, we're in the middle of the day because we have a very special guest with us today. We've got David from Main Event Comics. If I could speak properly. There we go.
Hello.
How are
No
you, man?
worries. I'm doing great. Just got off work. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's my day. It's my week off. I have some time off, so yeah, that made it easy to schedule this. And just living the dream, as they say.
Well, good. I'm glad we were able to actually work it out. So,
Yeah.
and
So
how's Baby-tastic and Mrs-tastic?
they're doing very well, thank you. Yeah, we just had a little bit of a walk, which kind of turned into a sprint. Because, like, honey, I got to set up. Come on.
Very cool.
But yeah, he had his first Halloween. He still doesn't know what's going on, so everything was great.
So what'd you dress him up as?
He was a puppy.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
no comic stuff. None yet. We'll wait until he could make that choice, I guess.
Yeah. That'll be cool.
Mm-hmm. What about you? Did you now? I know that you wear a mask typically for your videos. Did you dress up for Halloween at all?
The only thing I wore was this Riddler mask from the Batman. So that's all I wore.
It's good. I'm on my screen, so I didn't realize it was the Riddler mask. I was like, oh, it's a different one. He switched it up from the Bane mask.
Yep. Yeah. I want to try this one, see how it goes. So trying to mix it up just a little bit. So I am wearing my own glasses, by the way, because I am really blind and I want to see the chat on the TV right here. So
there you go. So for those of you who may not be familiar with David, he creates content, Main Event Wrestling and Comics. Great kind of variety. I like that he takes. Why don't you tell us? I know you take people from the community and put them into a WWE game.
Yeah, those who want to participate and allow me to kind of create an avatar for them in WWE 2K22. I do so in that I just pit them through matches. Hey, Trev, how you doing?
Yeah, Trev is here. Always a good guy here to pop in.
Trev is awesome.
Yeah.
Brian LCS is in it. Neil's Comics and Video Games. White Mojo Wolf.
Paul's here.
Let's see. Freedom Sufferer Cards. Let's see who else is in it.
I saw you had A Surfer.
Yeah, A Surfer. Yep, A Surfer is in it, and I just debuted Cole from Cole's Comic Claims.
I have to check. I might be one behind then. The last one I remember watching was Neil and A Surfer.
Yeah, Neil and A Surfer. There's a big Halloween event that I did, a Halloween Havoc on Halloween night that I did, and that was Cole's first appearance. I'm not going to spoil what happened, but he faced off with Brian LCS in a Hell in a Cell match.
And I just like the details that you do in these videos. Where not only just that you have the person more or less down. Look, I mean, they're going to be more muscular. It's a WWE match, but even just like the backgrounds, and I know you get Brian's music involved in it too. That I like those little touches.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that brings a little bit more to the table to kind of bring a little bit to from their channel to their character. So, but honestly, a lot of it depends on how much free space I have in my phone to be able to create all that.
Oh, so, yeah. The struggle's real. Struggle's real. I lost 3 videos to iMovie because of space issues that somehow messed up. I don't even know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm on the lookout for a new editing program, but that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. And that's also a heads up to everybody. You're going to see just a bunch of catching up with Battober. You're going to see like 4 or 5 videos hit this week from me, just because I was like, I can't wait too long on them.
Yeah, I just saw one you posted earlier. So.
Oh yeah, it was day 2. Yeah.
Very nice.
And I know you do comic reviews, not as much as the wrestling, but I have to tell you, I finally read the first issue of a book you recommended, Metal Society. Yes. I didn't read the rest yet. I thought I had all the parts rather. I only have the first 3 for some reason, unless I misplaced them. I'm disorganized, but I'm looking forward to more of it. It was definitely a different pace, and it's a nice surprise.
Yeah, I'm glad if you enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So it's one that I read like the first issue of, and I was hooked. It's a really great premise with humans being extinct, robots bringing them back, and kind of it takes that fear that humans have of, robots are taking our jobs, and kind of flips it. So the robots are the ones that are concerned, and I thought that was just pretty amazing.
Yeah,
so, psychedelic.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's here too. Paul's here. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and we're going to jump right into the 70-minute stories. Are you prepared?
I am. I as
Have you?
much as I can possibly be. Yep.
That's good enough. Okay, so I will tell you when to start
Okay.
and go right ahead.
Okay. So probably with all of us, it might be cliche at this point to say that I was into superheroes and all this what is called nerd culture ever since I was a kid, but it's the truth. I was. I lived in a little town in Texas, and was huge into Superman and the Flash at that time. Superman was my guy. And I'd watch things like Voltron, Masters of the Universe, Ninja Turtles, all that stuff that was popular back then and still is for us. But I didn't collect comics at that time. I read them occasionally. I was that kid who would stay at the grocery store in the magazine aisle while my parents did all the shopping. And I'd sit there and I'd flip through comic books and magazines and go through like the video rental racks and just look at stuff. So that was who I was. I didn't start actually collecting comics until I moved here to Arizona, and that was around '92. And my dad took me to Walmart to get some supplies that we needed, and there was a comic book collector's kit that was hanging on the shelf. It had 3 comics and it had 3 bags and boards in it. Um, one of those comics was X-Men #1, the first Jim Lee one. And I read that, and that's what started me actually collecting comic books, especially with the X-Men. So that was my love for that. Um, I go to my local comic shop and I would hang out there browsing through the long boxes, sitting with the owner of the shop while he opened up packs of trading cards. And that's how I learned a lot about all the different characters, was through trading cards before I even got into collecting comics. Um, and we had a little pack at school who would read comics, and especially around when the Marvel versus DC event happened, we would all sit around and we would read comics when we were supposed to be like participating in like PE class or eating lunch. We were those nerds at school who stayed to themselves in their little corner. Um, but yeah, that's a lot about how like that started. Um, and then let me see what other details that I need to get out. We got plenty of time left. Um, I've switched from selling my comics to recollecting to selling to recollecting off and on over the years. But yeah, now I'm where I'm at right now with the current YouTube channel and collecting comics how they are. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Not an exciting origin story, but that's it.
Every story is exciting. This might be the quickest one we've had. You're at 4 minutes. Why don't you tell us what happened in between, I guess, reading during study hall or during class and now? Like, what were you collecting, or what are you collecting? How's your collection expanded and shrunk, and if you're like me, expanded a little bit again?
Oh, it's changed a lot over the years since the times like I first started collecting till now. Um, like I was there for the launch of Image. Like we tried to collect all the spawns, like Wildcats, things like that. Trying to get that's what '90s kids did back then. Tried to collect all the Image #1s. Trying to get all the Marvel Masterpiece cards. It was X-Men, getting Uncanny X-Men, X-Men Adventures, which I really loved. Spider-Man, which is one I'm really into, like right now. It's kind of funny that I didn't really get into Spider-Man when I first started collecting because I thought he was too funny. I wanted serious in my comics, and I didn't learn until later, or realize till later, that's a great quality that makes Spider-Man who he is. The quips and the jokes, and I love that. Batman, I really got into collecting through Nightfall. That was the first Batman story arc that I read. Prior to collecting comics, I watched the Batman 66 with Adam West and Burt Ward, really into that. I remember getting a VCR for Christmas, and one of the tapes that my dad got me, he actually rented it, was the Michael Keaton Batman, the first Tim Burton one. So that was the first Batman movie I ever watched. And then, yeah, now it's grown. Back then, I was mostly just Marvel and DC. Now, I've gone into other, besides Image, other independent companies like Boom and IDW, which I really love IDW because they have all like the franchises or most of the franchises that I loved as a kid, like Power Rangers, and they've got Godzilla, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So that is a company that I'm really enjoying at this point. But that's how my comic collection sort of grew and mutated over the years. So
Yeah. So yeah, let me do this. You're at 2 more minutes. Is there anything else you want to add about collecting in those 2 minutes?
No, I can't think of anything. I was going to take notes, but I wanted to come in on this off the cuff. There's not really a lot to tell. I don't have a lot of stories as far as my collection, how I got into it. It's just what has happened since then, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to just go to the budget here. Now, what kind of struck me, I think that you and I, it sounds like we started collecting around the same times, just because as soon as you started saying stuff like the Marvel Masterpiece cards, you know, when the birth of Image, so to speak, I was right there too. That was the first time we had an LCS pop up in our town. But yeah, you know, I had never heard of anybody finding like those collector kits at the Walmart. Do you still have that that original X-Men issue?
I don't know. I have the cover. It was the Colossus, the one with Colossus on it. That was the cover. That's what I remember from it. But I remember it was X-Men #1.
I'm kind of curious if that was at that point then, if it was a newsstand or if it was. I don't think they did deluxe editions back then.
No, it was
a little bit later on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just that the first single issue. I think it might have been a newsstand at that point. I couldn't tell you for the life of me what the other two books were. They were probably just two that were thrown in there that absolutely nothing, but X-Men #1 stood out. So.
Good. Now, how you're not? Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you collecting X-Men now?
I'm collecting X-Men, but not the others. I did start picking up New Mutants again, just because there's a new character that I absolutely enjoyed named Escapade, who was in this most recent issue. So I'm picking that up for that story arc and seeing if she continues with being a member of New Mutants or goes on to do another thing.
I mentioned it because I've said before, I professed, I think that New Mutants is my favorite of the newer Krakoan Age, let's say X-Men, consistently my favorite of that. And I think if you're into 90s X-Men, check out just when Vita Ayala took over. There's just some really great moments in there. And she gives a lot of credence to characters that we don't really think about, like Warpath, for example.
Yeah.
Had a really great part in that. I know that I think she's on a break from it right now for this arc. I think it's a 3-issue arc, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, there's some really great moments in that. And I asked that too because at times I'll start talking about the Krakoan Age of X-Men, and I find a lot of people who started collecting when we were collecting X-Men are very like, well, that's not my X-Men.
Yep, that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. And when the whole Hoxpox started and this whole Krakoa era, that I did get all the issues. Like I picked up every title. I dropped off of Fallen Angels after like issue 2, of course.
Yeah.
But I do remember New Mutants going up to where they had to go to Beak's house, and you had Boomer in that whole episode there. That was pretty fun. But yeah, I am missing the 90s X-Men a lot. Yeah, Krakoa is okay. It's just not the X-Men that I love.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of strikes me as I'm always a little bit behind in my reading, but with everything going on with them right now, it kind of strikes me as strange that, you know, X-Men was always defending people who hated and feared us. And, you know, you hear things like, oh, why don't you, go to your own, get out of our way, go to your own island or something like that. It's like, okay, well, we're here. Like, well, you know, get out of our, why do you have an island now? That's terrible. No, go far away, go off this earth. It's like, okay, well, we have a planet. We're still mad at you. You know, it's like a bad running joke almost. But I think that from what I've seen, at least in the previews, and I'm going to do a longer video, I think, about it at some point, I think that the Krakoan Age is going to be coming to an end soon. If you look at some of the events they have, and then they have a bunch of limited series coming out that kind of sound like more of the 90s types of plots that we're used to seeing.
Right, and I think you're right. With the whole Sins of Sinister that's going to be coming out,
Well,
I think, yeah.
even past that, I know that Bishop is having a limited series. Um, I want to say there's another Gambit limited series coming. I might be wrong on that.
Aren't they still doing like the Gambit issue right now? That's just like a 5-issue arc, right?
I thought it was just a 5-issue series, and that one kind of surprised me, to be honest with you.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like, oh yeah, then they announced what is it? Another. I think isn't like Exterminators supposed to be just a few issues as well?
Yeah, it's like a 4-issue arc.
Yeah, and then I think there's like, I think all these little limited series are basically going to ease into the more traditional X-Men type of stories. But I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I hope so. And you bring up a good point with how they've got their own island now, and then they got the planet, which and people still hate them. But
yeah,
the way I see it, is my opinion, they don't hate them for being mutants like they used to. They're hating them for the things that they are doing now, like taking over Mars, having the resurrection protocols, being able to come back from the dead. It's more about the things they're doing than who they are. And that's an important piece of who the X-Men were and what kind of message that they can bring.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, I kind of like what they've done as far as, at least leading up to Inferno, I felt like it was more, you had that feeling like, okay, wow, they're a real international affair. They're a nation. I don't think it's necessarily has that same sense post Hickman leaving.
Right.
That second Hellfire Gala just kind of came and went compared to the first one. Like, it didn't really have that big of an impact. And now I feel like there's less cohesion between the titles, which is good and bad. Because it's good in the sense you could pick up X-Force and not say, okay, well, the story's continued over here. But I don't know. I kind of like that cohesion myself.
I did too.
Yeah.
And especially they used the gala. It seemed like this year was more setting up the Spider-Man story with Wolverine and Mary Jane. And it wasn't so much of an election as to who's going to be on the X-Men team. More like, okay, if he's in or she's in, I want in, or I should be in as well. It was kind of more like self-volunteering once it reached a certain point.
Yeah.
But the whole, I do like the idea of voting who is going to be on the X-Men team. That's cool.
See, what I kind of thought was weird about that when they started doing it was they went out of their way to establish the X-Men have this island and they're kind of a haven and they're kind of away from everybody. And then it's like, but the X-Men team now has a treehouse in the middle of Central Park.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, we're still connected, even though we're not. But yeah, that I have to say, I think was probably the closest thing to the older X-Men that you've seen. But I don't know, to me, it didn't make sense. Why didn't they just go back to the mansion if they wanted to go into New York? I mean, I know it's not the city, but.
Yeah, exactly. Or even be based out of Krakoa. Like,
yeah.
You're going to set up this nation, but you're also going to seclude yourself from the nation that you just created to seclude yourself. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Let me switch gears for a second over to Batman. Now, I'm going to take a guess because we've seen you in the Riddler mask. You usually appear in a Bane mask.
Yeah.
And I'm looking on my phone, so it's a little small, but I see a Court of Owls mask in the back. Is Batman your favorite, or is that just the coolest masks?
Batman is one of my two favorites. It fluctuates between Batman and Aquaman, to be honest with you. So they're my two top DC characters.
You're talking two different kind of, I think, ends of the spectrum, at least in my opinion. So what I guess what's your, for lack of a better word, attraction to each character, and why do you think you keep flowing back and forth between the two?
Because with Batman, it's the obsession. Like, he's got this thing that happened to him with his parents' murder, but he's never really let go of it. And that is what drives him to do everything that he's doing. The relationships that he has with everybody, at the core, they're all affected because of this one event and one obsession that he has. And he's got the rogues gallery that are just awesome, and Aquaman, I love the ocean. I absolutely do. I'm definitely an ocean person. And I love that he is of both worlds, not tied to one. But he will protect one over the other if he needs to. Like he was king of Atlantis, but if something happens with Earth, he'll fight Atlantis to defend Earth, and vice versa. So he's not loyal to just one of those sides.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
I agree with you on Batman. It always kind of struck me as he's kind of, in my opinion, of all the comic characters, especially from the major companies, why don't we say, he's kind of the most tragic, I think, in that sense, out of all of them. Because I mean, really, he's got a mission that he could never complete, and I feel like nobody really kind of put a spin on that or really addressed that until Tom King's run, which I know is not popular among diehards. I liked it
I
myself,
do
but
too.
yeah.
I loved it.
So now you picked up Batman. It sounds like around the same time I did during Nightfall. I got to ask, did you stay with it continuously or did you take a break in between?
I stayed with it past Night's End for a little bit, because I loved, like, the first issue I picked up to get me into that storyline was Batman 497, where Bane broke Batman's back. I'm like, I saw the cover when I walked into the local comic shop. I'm like, who is this? Who is this guy? Like, what's he doing to Batman? And I read the issue. I'm like, this guy broke into the Batcave. He took down the Batman. What's going on? So I spent the next several days, even a couple of weeks, like riding back and forth from Circle K on my bike, picking up past issues and going to my LCS, trying to collect all of Nightfall and get that story because I was obsessed with Bane. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. And then, yeah, I stayed through Knight's Quest, which I did not enjoy, but I did like Knight's End. Like, you could, so people could talk to me all day long about how Jean-Paul Valley is a great character and Azrael is awesome. Because of what happened in Nightfall, I can't stand the dude. I have a personal grudge against him.
Yeah,
know?
and I don't think they've really been able to revisit Azrael, even when it's not, even when it's not the same character, when it's somebody else.
Yep.
Since then, and I don't know if it's just a tarnish or really nobody has a great spin on it, but there you go. Yeah, I started with Nightfall. I went through everything. I went a little bit into Night Quest and jumped off. I remember. I don't know what issue it was, but they introduced the Bat Train, and I was like, all right,
Yes.
yeah, I don't need to read this.
Yeah.
But I picked it up when I heard, okay, Bruce Wayne is coming back. I guess that was for right at the tail end of Night Quest and right when Night's End was starting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right around there, yes. And I
And
remember like that train. Yeah, he had Harold down in the Batcave building all this stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I could jump off. I don't need this. But and then I didn't pick it up again until I got back into comics. So you're talking, I mean, that was Night's End was that mid '90s maybe, and then and then I got back into comics in 2001. So pretty big gap there.
Yeah. I think that wasn't that right around Cataclysm and No Man's Land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people have told me that that's a great read, but it's just every time I've attempted to try to pick up a trade for it, it's like, well, you've got like 3 phone books worth of stories to read. So I don't. I've been toying with the idea of checking out the DC app, and if I do, that's going to be one of the first stories I read or attempt to read at least.
Yeah, and I think it's even more extensive than that, as like just the 3 books. So I know there's like over 30 or 40 issues with Nightfall, Night's Quest, and Night's End, but I think it's even more extensive with No Man's Land and Cataclysm.
Yeah. So what is in your pulls right now?
Good question, because I actually canceled my entire pull list with my LCS. So that's going to take a place in January, because not purely financial. Part of it is FOMO. Mm-hmm. I get that quite heavily, so that kind of ties into financially. But it is mostly because there's not much that I'm really enjoying right now, truthfully, other than Batman, Ninja Turtles, things like that. Plus, I don't want to have that commitment with a pull list where I have to go in if I decide I don't want something, but it's already ordered. I got to get it anyway. So
your LCS doesn't do like a return policy or anything like that, or
not that I'm aware of. I've never asked. So I will go in there if I have something ordered. I'll pick it up even if I don't want it because, hey, I had my shop hold this. I had them specifically order this for me. I'm not going to tell them no now that they've gotten it in. So
yeah. And I could respect that. My LCS used to, the original owner had something in place where if you didn't want something, it would take 2 months before it was no longer in your pulls, just because that's how long it took for the system to update. Now, under different ownership, they've loosened that up a bit. And to mistakes happen. Sometimes you get something else coming in. That's just how it goes.
Right.
But so, are you thinking of just picking it up again in January, or is that just kind of like I don't know, like a pie in the sky type of date?
I'm not sure yet,
Mhm.
because I am going to have, and this is kind of a second answer to your question, I'm going to have a pull list for now through the online site Atomic Empire. So because that helps with the financial part. The
Mhm.
more you add, the bigger the discount that you get. So I've got a few books that are on my pull list for that, which is mostly just the Ninja Turtles, the
Mhm.
Armageddon game, um, Batman, because as much as I love my LCS, they always forget to pull Batman for me. So I end up having to order it
Yeah.
online anyway. Um, and then just a couple of other random books here and there if I like a cover or not. Jimmy G, how you doing?
Hey, Jimmy.
But I'm
Yeah.
also going to be stopping that, and I'm thinking about going pure digital for any new books. So
Yeah. I mean, DC has just made it, I think, a little bit more accessible,
yep,
because I think it's only a 30-day wait now.
yep,
Um, Marvel, for now, is still 6 months, but I mean, I could tell you switching to Marvel Unlimited saved me a lot of money
yeah,
personally, because I could just focus on what I really want from Marvel. And to be honest with you, I might be doing more things digitally further. I think when House of X ends, basically, to where I maybe just picking up independent titles in print, just because those, I don't want to subscribe to, like Comixology or anything like that. But yeah, no, I respect that totally. Look, at the end of the day, if your comic hobby is interfering with your budget or your household, you got to make adjustments, and we
yep,
all do it from time to time.
yep, absolutely. And it's still like I can still go into my LCS, pick up back issues, and still support them and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. Plus trades are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
but too, a lot of times I've noticed I'll pick up an issue when it comes out, and then for whatever reason, if you wait like 6 months or so, maybe not so much now, but like I know, when my LCS had the original owner and he was in the middle of selling, I'd come back in a couple months later and I was like, oh yeah, here's the issue you just bought, but it's discounted now.
yeah,
Yeah, they haven't done that in a long time, and I think that's why.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you tend to find it cheaper online, though. A lot of the sites, like you mentioned, Galactic Empire, I have seen do offer discounts if you pre-order.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can build your pull list with Atomic Empire, and then you can choose your covers. You could choose how many of each book you want, how many covers like that. And if you want to skip the next week, as long as you cancel it before like the middle of the week prior, you're good.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, it's really convenient. So I enjoyed it a lot.
If you are just joining us, we had our 7-minute discussion with David from Main Event Comics here, and
Epic fan.
start putting your questions, by the way, in the chat. I didn't have any questions sent DM to me, but we want your questions. So go ahead and put those in. I don't know if my wife is watching it. She might be putting the baby down because she usually likes to text in a question or two. But in the meantime, so Batman has been your main kind of pull lately in Ninja Turtles. I know that you mentioned that. What is it? Let's see. What's something that maybe you were reading and just dropped recently for whatever reason?
Oh man, good question. Um, I started when King Spawn started. That's one. I started up and I dropped it. As cool as it was, and it was awesome. The art, the story was all awesome. The price tag was awesome. It was $2.99 for better quality than Marvel and DC are putting out paper wise.
Hmm.
But I kind of migrate towards my favorite characters than I do anything else.
Hmm.
So that is what fuels my collection essentially. Um,
The yeah, well, you mentioned the paper quality. I found more recently, it is starting to creep into Image as well. The issue with the actual paper. That last issue of Junkyard Joe, I just read that a couple weeks ago, and I noticed it has a little bit of that same Marvel wave to it. So I don't know if it's something that we're going to start seeing more and more, but with the exception of that, I feel like more of the independents. I don't know. The paper just seems to be better.
It is.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Paul from Psychedelic has a question for us. I take it that the mask came more from your YouTube channel than comic characters. I'm not sure about that one. Why don't you go ahead and handle that one?
Yeah, no, it kind of did. It was when I started the YouTube channel. I started without the mask, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm sitting here, it's looking at myself, trying to be like, okay, am I supposed to look in this little hole on the front of the camera? And it just looked ridiculous. I absolutely hated it. So I went to the mask shortly after trying to do off-camera stuff. And then I saw what kind of fueled it also is on AEW, All Elite Wrestling. They have a commentator there named Excalibur who wears a mask while he commentates. And I think that just looks cool. So I was like, you know what? I can do this.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because I always thought it was more of, because I know that you're heavily into wrestling. I thought it was more of like a Rey Mysterio or Kane type of thing. So
no.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to try to do more comic book character masks. But Bane's mask is the closest that I've seen that's both.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that today. I was like, well, he likes Batman. Maybe it's kind of like a luchador type of thing too, but
yep.
Yeah. Well, here, Psychedelic actually had a follow-up. My main event kind of reminds me of wrestling. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It was hard trying to choose a name because I started off as the Uncanny D-Man, which I really love that name too, and I still use it for gaming and things like that. And it might come back at some point, but I wanted to I realized I was doing comic book stuff on my YouTube channel, but I was ignoring the wrestling side, which is something else I'm also a fan of. So I wanted to find a way to merge the two. And coming up with the name was kind of difficult, trying to find wrestling terms that sound cool on a YouTube channel, searching them, seeing if they're already taken. I'm like, how about Main Event Comics? And that just sounded cool to me.
Yeah, it works very well.
Thank you.
Along those lines too, I'm trying to think right now. I know everybody talks about Do a Powerbomb. I guess that's the most recent kind of wrestling related comic. I know that I've recommended The Job from Legacy Comics. I know their first issue is coming out soon. But going further back, like, have you looked into any other kind of comic wrestling or wrestlers and comics type of material? Like, CM Punk comes to mind. I remember he had a little bit of a run with Drax. I never read those issues, but just curious.
Yeah, there was an issue. I can't remember what it was, but Raven from ECW and WCW, and he was in WWE a little bit. He wrote a book. I believe it was an issue of Amazing Spider-Man that he read. I could be wrong. There's all sorts of different wrestlers who make ash can size comic books. Like Lita has one that I've got it up on my shelf. She wrote one. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them or not, but the Iconics in WWE, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay, they wrote a book about like their travels and stuff. There's quite a bit. There's books on Andre the Giant that have come out. And and kind of going back, I should have covered this when I was doing the 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
There was the WCW comic book that was out by Marvel, 12-issue series that I enjoyed. Still trying to collect that run. And also a WWF Battle Mania comic that I collected back then. But what's really surprising that I've noticed is, you mentioned Do a Powerbomb, which is fantastic. People are talking. Everybody should be reading that, in my opinion. It's great. Daniel Warren Johnson, who writes it, is a huge wrestling fan. And he writes pro wrestling even better than those old WCW comic books that were based off of actual wrestlers and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Even better than the WWF comics that were out as a kid. IDW had their WWE comic books, and those were fun. but if Daniel Warren Johnson wrote a ongoing pro wrestling story, it would be fantastic.
Hmm.
But he needs to do that.
What's your feeling on, and I can't think of the character's name, but he's been in the news lately because a Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and then some rappers are going to be playing him.
Yeah, Bad Bunny is
Yeah.
going to be playing him. I never knew that character existed until that was announced.
Yeah, I have the comic, and I remember reading it and not liking it, but it's been in the box, I think, since then.
Well, now that he's going to be, Bad Bunny's going to be playing that character, the prices have gone up on that ever since they announced it, of course. The spec.
Yeah, it'll probably recede soon. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just how everything's been going lately.
Yeah.
Trev asks, the people, as I almost took my phone down, the people play each other in the wrestling match, or are they simulated? Those are simulated, right?
They are simulated.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't even control those. They're just, I put it on AI versus AI and just let things happen as they go.
And recently, I know you had a little bit of a controversy. You had to do a redo with Neil and a Surfers match. It was a DQ.
Wasn't a DQ. It was Neil, his character grabbed the ropes and the ref kept counting. That should be a rope break in real wrestling like terms. But what happened off of that is because I wanted to do the match between A Surfer and Neil. A Surfer's character wins. He gets a shot at Neil's championship, the Dollar Bin Championship, which is just a ripoff of the $1 million belt.
It works, though.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought of that, and I'm like, I can't possibly do this. This is going to make no sense. But I had to. And the match lasted like 2, maybe 3 minutes, and then you get that ending. I'm like, I can't post this. This is like nothing happened here. What? And I'm like, okay, I got an idea. I've got to do this. Like, a rematch has to happen. So then you see me coming on, like, as the owner of Main Event Comics, I'm declaring this has to happen now. So that was just a way to kind of fix the mistake that happened there to make it better.
But you made it really did make a difference. Like, it was a very out of everything, I say, like, the most dramatic, at least of the wrestling videos I've seen.
Oh,
and yeah, no, it was great. It felt like maybe watching a real WWE match, except that I haven't watched any wrestling in a long, long time, but I feel like it would have been one of those things like, well, you have to come back here for SummerSlam to see the rematch, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was shooting for. So I'm glad it came across like that. Appreciate it. And the fact that people are enjoying it, that means a lot, because I honestly enjoy doing that probably even more than the comic book stuff. Because I can do that and simulate the matches, create characters and stuff while I'm working. So the job that I do, like, it's not a positive one because I spend the day getting yelled at by customers on the phone. So having that outlet to be able to spend my time doing while I'm working and having people enjoy it, that means a lot more, so much. It means a lot more than people commenting on the comic stuff.
And your boss isn't watching right now.
No, not at all. The shoot doesn't even know that I do this. So yeah.
We do have a question from Jimmy G, and then my wife does have a question as well. But Jimmy G's is more related to our discussion here. How long have you been following wrestling? What era did you start?
I started in 1990 with the Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, that era, and haven't looked back since. So, and that mid 90s era is my favorite. Like the early 90s to mid. I would say from 1990, 1991 to 96, 97 is my favorite era. So
now, how does it feel now that you see, The Rock started in wrestling, and now he's arguably one of the biggest movie stars out there. Florence Pugh she wasn't a wrestler, but she was in a true wrestling movie.
Yeah.
And now she's a big star too. So this kind of like your kind of like big, I don't want to say renaissance, but good kind of like a payoff type of thing as far as being a wrestling fan? Or
not really, because I've seen The Rock from the whole time he was in WWE, when he started in 96 to when he left around 2002 to start really doing the acting full time. So I was there, like, watching it for that run, and that was a fantastic run.
Mm.
But in my opinion, The Rock's much better on a microphone and acting than he is in the ring. So, he's where he should.
You're not wrong.
And now his daughter just got introduced in the WWE developmental NXT system last week, which was cool to see. She's the first fourth generation wrestler. So it's going to be interesting to see how she goes.
Yeah, I remember hearing a little something about that too. I didn't realize he had a daughter that old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. She's got some big boots to fill.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. That's a big shadow. Oh, Trevor's agreeing with you that The Rock is best on the mic here. Okay, so we're gonna go into yeah. I liked. I guess it was either towards the end of his career with wrestling, or maybe it was one of those times he came back after one of the movies and he was a heel again. I remember they had a match here in Jersey and he would come out and sing and he said something about, New Jersey, like the air smells or something like that. But people are still cheering for him, like, yeah, we smell, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't have a heel in the wrestling business these days because people will cheer for being insulted. They won't take it the same way as they did in the 80s and early 90s. And yeah, that was a cool era with The Rock turning heel, doing the whole Hollywood Rock when he came back and faced Hogan. But when he was originally introduced in 96 as Rocky Maivia, to when he joined the Nation of Domination and took over the leadership in that role, that's my favorite part of The Rock, because he would celebrate himself. He'd be like, okay, here's all these members of the Nation of Domination. You have Ron Simmons, who's really awesome, the leader of the Nation of Domination. I'm going to present everybody with Rolexes, but I'm going to present Farouk, Ron Simmons, with a huge painting of myself, a huge portrait of myself. I thought that was so cool. That's when he started doing the whole The Rock gimmick. So that was fun. And
whatever it takes him to get to it, I guess. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. It was a good build-up. And Jimmy G mentions Bob Backlund, who is one of my favorites. He was fantastic. And Superfly Jimmy Snuka, I know him was never like a really big fan. I just remember seeing him lose all the time. So, but Bob Backlund is amazing.
Yeah, I just remember with Superfly hearing some interviews with him years ago now on Opie and Anthony, and he was, I guess this was right when either he must have just retired or when it was like he should have. He just couldn't. He wasn't there. It was like he was talking to somebody else entirely.
Yeah.
And they were even playing like, they used to do the bumpers. They'd have a celebrity record, you're listening to, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's again, not having really watched wrestling back in the day. That was just kind of like my reference for Superfly Snuka.
Yeah. So, and he'd wrestle guys like Ravishing Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect and all that stuff.
Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, and they'd hype him up. He was good, he was athletic and stuff, but he one of those guys that I always saw lost. I never really saw him actually win. So,
but Trev has another question here. In your opinion, who is the greatest wrestler ever and why?
Oh man, tough question. Do you want to know, kind of clear it up a little bit, who my number one all-time favorite is, or who I think is just the greatest total package of what a wrestler represents, or what a pro wrestler should be?
You know what? I would usually tell Trev to clarify, but I'm going to say just tell us both. Sounds like you got some thoughts there.
Okay, so my favorites are Macho Man Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels. Those are my two favorites. I can never pick between the two, kind of like Batman, Aquaman situation. Because the athletic Macho Man is a character. Oh man, I absolutely love that dude. I remember at WrestleMania 8 when he won the world title from Ric Flair. I remember having a monster migraine. Like, it was so bad I couldn't even sit up. But I had to watch that show after the event to find out if he beat Ric Flair or not. And when he did, I was excited. I was up out of my seat, and then I couldn't move after that. Shawn Michaels is great. If you watch the original Degeneration X stuff, the things that they did, you could never get away with now.
Oh, of course.
It's fantastic. And I think if memory serves, when Shawn Michaels turned on Marty Jannetty and super kicked him and threw him through the barbershop window, wrestling fans will know what I'm talking about. I believe that was my first ever heel turn. I've never seen anything like that before, and I just thought it was cool. Now, as far as who I think is the greatest wrestler, like overall package, it's Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar.
Interesting.
Yep, Brock Lesnar's got the look. He's got the wrestling ability. And if you think, because when you picture pro wrestler, you think big, jacked muscle dude, right? So that's Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
But he's got the athletic ability to back it up. And he's a guy that you could look at and be like, yeah, I don't want to fight you. There's nobody that has that except for Brock Lesnar right now.
I remember when I was watching wrestling is when he was just starting to come in. And I remember it kind of got like what's the guy's name from Rocky IV?
Drago?
Yeah, I got Drago vibes.
Yeah.
From him. Like it was almost like scary.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't want to walk down an alley and like see that dude standing there.
Oh, exactly. And I remember watching him in UFC a couple times. I don't remember anything specifically how well he did. I felt like he just kind of came and overwhelmed people. The only thing I remember about his UFC career is when he got in trouble for, I think after a win, he said something about Bud Light and stuff like that. And it turns out they were like the sponsor of the event. I'd have to look into that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think if memory serves, because I did watch his UFC career too, it was a very short UFC career.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, he either lost or won his first fight, of course. I can't remember. But then he immediately got a shot at the UFC Heavyweight Championship. And he won it. So in his second fight, he wins the UFC title. He won one title defense, and then he lost it to Cain Velasquez in his next title fight. That's if memory serves correctly.
Was that before or after he? I know he had. I think it was like a bad case of diverticulitis.
Yes, that was before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no way you're fighting after that. Like he almost died, if I remember.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he came back. Yeah. So because he's before UFC, he tried to he did a tryout for the Minnesota Vikings.
I remember reading that too. Yeah.
And then went to UFC. So I think he did a good job. You know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look, it makes more sense. Like, yeah, I can't fight like this. Let me go back. And is he still back in wrestling? I don't even know.
He is, yeah. Yeah, he just came back. He's actually going to have a match this Saturday in Saudi Arabia against Bobby Lashley, which I think is going to be good because there's two pure wrestlers right there. Two big dudes going at it, you know?
We do have a wife question coming in. Switching gears. We could always switch back to if the chat has more questions about wrestling. What is your favorite part of comic collecting and why?
Oh man, that's a great question. It all comes down to the loving the stories and the characters, because it's more. I know there's a lot of people that talk about like the creators and everything like that, and how great the covers and stuff are, but the magic of a comic book is on the inside. The story, the characters, and I didn't even know who Stan Lee was until I saw Mallrats. You know, like I remember his name from Stan's Soapbox in Marvel, but when I saw Mallrats, I'm like, oh, okay, that's Stan Lee. I can put a face with the name now. Yeah, it's all, and I didn't want to know who the puppets were, the puppeteers were behind the strings of these characters. You know, I didn't want to know about who the creators were. I wanted
now, let me ask, and this was a question that somebody asked me and it made me think about it. If, let's say, a story is great, but the artwork is terrible, will you still read that book?
It'll take me a couple of attempts to read it, but yes, I will. And I don't know, you might remember this, but it's shortly before, no, it was after when they did Brand New Day, and they did that separation of Mary Jane and Peter Parker. There's an artist that took over. I think I have it right here. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, right here. Here's one of the issues. It was part of this series.
I thought you were going to go to, I think is that Chris Pacello?
Oh, yes, Chris Pacello.
Yeah.
Yep. It took me a long time to be able to focus on the story with Pacello's art. But then didn't he also did an X-Men book too? With Wolverine and the X-Men, right? I believe so.
Yeah, what's strange with him is if I feel like right now, like these days, he's either great or not. Like I there were times reading that Spider-Man run, which, and I generally like his work, but sometimes you just couldn't tell what was going on.
Yeah.
But you want to really see some great Chris Pacello, go back to when Generation X launched years ago. That was phenomenal. And it was just so fresh and well done. It had a different vibe to it. Now, I totally agree. It's very hard, very unfocused. I do love, though, from his run, I remember there was an issue right around then where Spider-Man was fighting Tombstone, and there was just an image. I think the cover was just either one of them was Tombstone punching Spider-Man in the face, and then the next issue was Spider-Man punching Tombstone in the face. His artwork looked great on that one. But I hear what you're saying.
I don't think I've ever seen that, but was it Pacello who did the first run of Generation X?
I believe so.
Okay, that's interesting because Generation X #1, even though I have it now, was on my Grail list. It was the #1 book I wanted to pick up. I loved it, that series so much, but never had the first issue, so I couldn't remember really who did it.
Oh yeah, that was a great title back in the '90s. It's funny. I think I fell off after they did Operation Zero Tolerance.
So did I.
Yeah. But I tried to read. I remember a few years ago they tried to revive the title, and it was just unreadable.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about Bastion that I just couldn't get into as a villain.
No.
Why?
You know what it is? Around even a little bit before then, I felt like I realized, like, if you go back the year prior, they had Onslaught. Yep. And they showed, okay, Onslaught, and you've got these Sentinels are invading the city and everything like that, and it's up to the heroes to stop it. It was like, around the time I think Independence Day had come out, and it kind of occurred to me, it was like, wouldn't the military try to like come in and do something? Hey, there's a giant guy attacking New York City. Oh, we'll let the Avengers and the X-Men take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, no matter how much destruction there's going to be, we know that this can cause like a worldwide havoc, but we'll just leave it in the hands of these guys. Yeah, for sure. I get that.
Most of whom we don't like.
Yep. And then also that kind of brings up like the Age of Apocalypse too. How you've got these groups of superheroes that know all of reality is about to change for everybody on the planet. But we're not going to let anybody know.
Yeah. I think that's what I liked in that time around Excalibur. I felt like they kind of tied in a little bit, though not too much of the government into it. And that's kind of one of the things I liked about the Krakoan age of X-Men. I felt like, okay, well, at least you're acknowledging that there's a whole world. It's not just focused within these Marvel characters.
Right, and that's something that the Avengers, X-Men, and Eternals Judgment Day is doing. I don't know if you're reading that or not.
I decided to skip it, but I've been hearing good things, which is odd for the first time in a big crossover.
It kicked off really slowly, but it brought focus onto actual civilians in the Marvel Universe and how they're being affected by this. But I want to say issues 4 and 5, maybe it's 3 and 4, 4 or 5, can't remember off the top of my head, have a really great...
Oh, David. Oh, we lost you for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got a phone call.
Same thing happened to me. Don't worry about it.
There's a really great connection between Nightcrawler and Captain America that I think makes the entire event worth reading and picking up. It's fantastic.
Hey, Cat Fan.
Cat Fan, how you doing?
That's one of my favorite YouTube handles. I don't know why. I think it rolls off the tongue so well.
Man, I love that cat roll in all his videos.
Oh, yeah.
Great. See, on the flip.
So now we talked about, could you read a comic with bad artwork? Let's talk about on the flip side, like when we both started beginning of the 90s. You know, you had Image starting out, where it was the opposite. You had good art and maybe not so great stories. Could you pick up a comic like that now, you think, and enjoy it?
Now, no,
Yeah.
not at all. So it's hard to think right now of an issue or of a series that's like that, because I'm so or not customer. I'm still thinking about work. I'm so character like focused on like my collection, that is an exception. Like if there was a horrible writing or horrible art, but it's a character like Batman, I'll just read it. I can get through it. So because it's Batman, or the same reason why I'm reading X-Men still, for the characters like Rogue, Cyclops. I'll stick with it. You know, if Cyclops ever leaves the X-Men team, I'm dropping the tag. If it's still Krakoa. So as long as he's still on the team, yeah, I'll get it. But I can push my way through if the character's worth it.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I've been in a couple spots. I was about to say, you know, I'm kind of a little bit better with the character itself, just because I realize, like in terms of Batman, okay, there's always going to be another Batman story or anything. I could skip it. But then, like, I think of Marauders, which I just tried to, I just dropped not too long ago, that second volume, complete 180 from the first volume. And you had both, in my opinion at least, bad art and a bad story. And I just held on to that until it was like, I just have to sit this one out. You know, I wanted to like it so much, and it's just,
See, I haven't picked the new volume of the Marauders yet. I did read most of the original, the first one. But
if you liked the original, they destroyed, in my opinion, every good premise that the original introduced.
really,
Like it's no purpose. And at first I was like, okay, well, they're doing the same thing, but in space. But it's just not well done, at least in my opinion.
so it's no more Kitty Pryde on her pirate ship with her little band of mutants going around to
No, and
do their stuff.
that's kind of the one of the unfortunate things about it is, at least when I was reading it, was a good team, but I felt like the writer, I think it's Steve Orlando, whom I knew from Green Lantern Corps during the Jeff Johns era. To me, he made everybody sound the same. And then you'd have an entire issue where maybe one of these key characters just didn't interact or didn't speak. Now, hold on, Cat Fan said something I got to ask. Cat Fan, are you talking about the current volume, or are you talking about the prior volume with Kitty Pryde? Because that first volume, in my opinion, was one of the best things out of the Krakoan age. This one, but yeah, like they had, it was Psylocke. Kitty Pryde, I think, is on the team, but she's nowhere near what she was in the first volume. Bishop, a couple other characters, and then yeah, see, that's the one I'm talking about. Look, if you like it, great. I couldn't get into it at all. And Cassandra Nova was like the big heel character in that. Like,
Never got into that character.
I think it was interesting when they introduced her, and I felt like it was one of those characters where it was a diminishing investment. They just haven't done a whole lot of interesting things with her since then. But Cat Fan likes it. You know, more power to you. Yeah. I felt like they had an interesting premise, like they are shooting back into time now. I didn't realize that was the case then, because the issue I dropped off, they had introduced or brought in, and I keep saying what his new name is wrong. I can't remember it. But in Age of Apocalypse, he was introduced as Holocaust. Yes. And then I remembered that they changed it.
Abyss? I think Abyss is.
No, Abyss was a separate character. He was Apocalypse's son in the Age of Apocalypse that Blink wound up almost killing, and he kind of snuck over into our reality with Nate Gray. Hey, Frog.
Yeah, the big orange guy, right?
Yeah.
I do remember. Now, Cat Fan brings up Dokken, and Dokken is a character I've started to really enjoy, especially with Leah Williams' X Factor run.
Oh yeah,
that was fun.
I loved her run. I felt like she was missing an issue somewhere in there, just because I felt like everything was a little too rushed.
It was. And she
Yeah,
even admitted that the final issue it ended too abruptly because of, I believe it was Hickman's exit that caused it to end prematurely.
yeah, and I had that opinion because it was just one of the great things about that particular run. I loved the integration just with Dakin and Aurora forming this relationship, but it all kind of escalated a little too quickly,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And I was like, I feel like maybe because at that time the Hellfire Gala was just coming around the corner, they had to speed it up a little bit. But I'm glad that you confirmed that for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe that's it. Have you read the Craven arc in X Factor?
I
Or
read the first
X-Force,
part.
X-Force.
Yeah, I read the first part. I haven't gotten into other parts yet, but X Force has been a very consistent title, I have to say, for Krakoa. And I know that you mentioned when we're going back and forth, I think on IG, that Craven is one of your favorite characters.
Yes, and
Yeah,
this 4 issue arc, so much fun. Like it's probably the most fun that I've had reading an X book since this whole Krakoa era started, since Hoxpox. It
yeah.
was
And I thought it was an interesting premise. They didn't really get too much into it, if I'm not mistaken, in the part that I read. But like I said, I have to play catch up, so I'm curious in seeing that.
yeah, I can't wait to see your thoughts on it. But have you read, since you really love New Mutants, have you read this one yet? The newest.
I
Is it
have it in my
31?
stack to read. I'm not up there yet. No.
Well, I'm going to continue like after this one because again, I picked it up because of Escapade on the cover, but I thought it was so much fun. It was good. You were right about New Mutants.
Yeah, but like I said, even after Brisson exited and Vita Alea jumped on, that's when I thought it got really interesting. Rod Rice was on the art. I think he's taking a break too. I really like he has like a more kind of an abstract style. It kind of is similar to Mike Del Mundo, but very, very good. There was even a really good arc. Um, if you liked Leah Williams' X Factor, then you'll like this arc too, where Scout, formerly Honey Badger, the clone of X-23,
Yeah.
She's starting to feel a little slighted because X-23 doesn't have time for her, Dakin doesn't have time for her, and she winds up finding a mentor in what's his name? Shadow King, who is also on the island. And one of the best covers of the series, by the way, in my opinion, came out of that. But very interesting play between them. What I want to do, though, too, because we're a little over an hour right now, I'm going to open it up to some of the other people who've just joined us. Cat Fan, Frog, we've been speaking to Main Event. Anybody else I missed in here, too? Well, anybody, of course, if you have any other questions, comics, wrestling, or anything else, really, for David from Main Event, comics and wrestling, go ahead and ask. It's your time.
Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. What's your favorite ice cream? There you go.
Oh, man. You put pumpkin in anything, I'll eat it.
Yeah. See? Anything. We could talk about anything. It's our channel.
Yep.
Well, it's my channel, but it's our chat. We can share it.
If anybody is still watching.
Yeah, we got a couple people here, too. But like I said, I'm opening up here. Cat Fan, Frog Brawler, anybody. Cat Fan and Frog Brawler just joined us a little while ago. That's why I named them directly. Yeah, Cat Fan also mentioned Somnus, which I'm probably just butchering his name, is in that book. Oh, here you go. Frog has a good one. I never thought about this one. On a scale of 10 to 60, I don't know about why 10 to 60, but how hot is that mask?
I would probably say a 59. So if it was the Bane mask, it would be in the hundreds right now. So, because I'm in Arizona, and even though it's November, it's still pretty hot outside. So, and the little room that is my office does get extremely hot. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny too. I just thought about it now. I have a Scarecrow mask I was gonna run up there and grab. Just it would be two guys in masks talking about.
That would have been great. That would have been awesome.
Oh, here, hold on. I'll grab it quickly. In the meantime, think of some more questions. We'll just be a second.
Okay. Yeah, I see your comment, Frog, and I don't know how people wear them outside watching football games. To each their own, but yeah, I would die. But I live in the wrong state. I'm more of a winter person, so Yeah, I can't see. Oh, Cat fan, who's your favorite mutant characters? Oh man, Rogue's number one. Um, let's see. Cyclops. Dazzler is the very first one. Oh, that's awesome. There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Yeah,
Okay. I had to throw the head on top of it.
absolutely. Might have to add that. I've got a Batman mask collection going. Might as well. Yeah, but that's awesome. Love that.
This is just for the yeah, I keep saying to people, yeah, I'm going to cut these up into shorts at some point. So I'll just throw this in. Maybe if I ever get to do that too. Just a couple guys in the afternoon sitting and talking about masks.
Take iMovie, cut all the audio out, trim the video so it's just when you started wearing the mask, and then overlay the entire interview over that. So,
yeah, too, we could just like if I had more room, I would just kind of zap back, maybe put a suit on or something, so I kind of had like a Moon Knight vibe. Just sitting here with a coffee, like, oh, we're chatting today, just a casual talk about anything but comics.
Nice. Yeah, that has to happen one day. But kind of going back to Cat fans' question, Dazzler is the first like mutant X-Men character that I ever got introduced to. Because I remember walking into the arcade, seeing X-Men, the arcade game, and I had never heard of the X-Men before. And the only open spot was Dazzler. So took that one, and I've been a fan of Dazzler ever since.
I always thought it was an odd choice to have her in that game.
It was. Have you ever, I'm sure you've seen it, Pride of the X-Men?
Of course, yeah.
Yes, so good.
That's you're talking about the pilot with where Wolverine had an Australian accent for no reason whatsoever.
Yep.
I remember, I think I bought that at RX Place. So you're talking like early 90s. And I remember watching with friends, and we were trying to figure out exactly what they were trying to say in the theme song. It was like, X-Men.
Save the day, save the day. Yeah. And I love that it's just like a half-hour episode of that whole arcade game.
Yeah.
It's fantastic stuff.
Frog, I got to tell you, I became a Hawkeye fan, not from the Avengers game, but he was always my choice, but from the Spider-Man side scroller. I don't know if you remember that one.
I do. I saw that one like Tucson Comic-Con a little bit ago. They had that set up, and that's the first time I've ever seen it. But I remember the Avengers game that he's talking about. Frog's talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, when I was about 14 years old, I used to work in kind of an indoor arcade, and they had that Spider-Man game, and that was okay. My lunch break, I'm gonna swallow a piece of pizza without chewing, and just play Spider-Man until my time is up.
Nice. Who were the bosses in that game?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, Frog, if you could find an emulator or something on it. Oh, what's that? Lockheed is back and is a member of the new Extreme X-Men. Yeah, you know what? I liked Extreme X-Men. I'm thinking about checking that one out. I'll go back to that in a second. But Frog, yeah, that's a great one. If you could find an emulator or something on that, yeah, you picked either between Spider-Man, Black Cat, or Hawkeye. And I remember the first boss was Venom, and he was in like the brain-eating mode. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he got like gigantic for no reason whatsoever, but it brought a good element into it. I remember fighting Green Goblin, and that was an annoying fight. And I remember Doom was the final boss. I don't remember who else was in it.
Interesting. So yeah. Venom first. That's an interesting placement for Venom.
Yeah, and they had great, at least for the time, at least I don't know about now, but great voice acting in it.
Really?
As well. Yeah, I remember this was. I guess it was in the early days of Venom because it was still very much like I'm going to eat your brains.
Yeah.
Type of thing, and Green Goblin just had like a haunting laugh in it as well. I remember that.
Oh, 90s goodness right there.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Cat fan mentioned Extreme X-Men. That was one of my favorite of the X books when I returned back to the hobby. Although I have to say, I think they kind of forgot about I forgot the character's name. I think it was like the third Thunderbird. It was a guy from India who I thought was a great character. They kind of just forgot about after a while.
I never read the original Extreme X-Men.
Yeah. Read it
'Cause
digitally. I think you could find them cheap if possible. It was a great team. The whole idea was that Destiny was dead at the time, or newly dead, and they were searching the globe for her diaries or her journal.
Hmm.
And I remember they had introduced a villain by the name of Vargas, and that is the only thing I remember about him.
that came out between Operation Zero Tolerance and Schism, right? And what was that other one where they were trying to? Everybody was after the baby. Baby.
Yeah.
Hope.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. That was a good one.
Messiah Complex.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was before Messiah Complex. You're talking. It wasn't a very long series at all, if I remember right. Early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got to fill in a lot of blanks between Operation Zero Tolerance and Messiah Complex. That's when I stopped reading X-Men for a little while.
Yeah. But well, look, I'm going to ask the chat one more time if we have any other questions here. I know Chip White Shadow just joined us. How are you, sir?
How's it going?
Yeah. So again, we're sitting here with David Main Event. David, thanks again for being generous with your time here. This is the longest one we've done so far. I might be wrong,
Yeah,
but
no problem.
it hasn't felt like it. I'll say that.
Thanks for having me on. It's a longer stream, but it was a shorter 7 minutes. So kind of balanced out there, I guess.
I don't know. Well, this is like a latex. I don't know what that's like, but yeah, I couldn't breathe in this.
This is better than the Bane one, though, because there's nothing on the back, and it's got holes at the nose and holes at the mouth. So it's a lot more breathable than the Bane mask. So it's not too unbearable.
So you got to light. I think you need to light it a little bit, because maybe it's just because I'm on my screen. I thought at first it was like the Gimp mask from Pulp Fiction.
Is it coming off that dark? Yeah.
On my phone it is. I don't know if you guys can see him a little bit better. Again, I'm on my phone here, so chime in.
I'm going to try to do the Court of Owls one at some point, but that one would require a suit. I've got one, but right now I just don't want to put that on.
It is dark. Okay, Trev confirmed. Yeah, I would say, look, go to Five Below, get a tuxedo T-shirt. That'll work.
Yeah, that's true. Good idea.
All right, so we're about 1 minute, 13 seconds in. I want to give you the floor. Anything that you'd like to plug, anything you have coming up, or anything you want to share?
Coming up, I can't really say what's coming up because I don't really plan too much in advance. Usually I come up with stuff the night before, and then because I get up for work at 3:00 in the morning, I have to clock in at about 4. So I've got that hour span where I'm like, I need to keep myself awake. So that's when I do all my videos just to kind of help stay awake. I'm going to try to get more wrestling stuff in. I know Fanboy Prime requested to be a character. I know Comic Bookworm has mentioned that he wants to be a character too.
That'll be great.
Yeah. I think also I can get him to actually do, if I can get Comic Bookworm in the game doing the worm, would be the greatest thing I could possibly do. It's going to happen. I just don't know when.
I said you have my permission to use my likeness, and you can use Chad. He's going to be back soon, within the next month, maybe.
Good. I need a Gilbert type character, so Chad would be perfect for that. So, and I do see a Trev. It'll happen. But yeah, I definitely want to get Bookworm in there and Family Prime. But there'll be more wrestling content. I've got some content I got to do. I picked up these for those that are interested. I picked up some Yu-Gi-Oh stuff that I'm gonna unbox. So,
card reads, yeah.
And more comic pickups. Got a trade that I did with Brian LCS that he already did a video for, but I'm gonna do one too. So that's coming up.
It's a crossover. There you go.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, David, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate you giving us your time, and thanks to everybody here in the chat who took the time to watch this. And look, if you've come in late, or if you're watching this later on, that's fine. You can see this pre-recorded, and of course, you could find David at Main Event Comics and Wrestling. Very active and great stuff.
Yep, thank you so much.
Joe just came in. Hi and bye, Joe. We're gonna cut out as well. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Peace, love, and comics.
thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.